Dan Wigington, geoengineeringwatch.org, George Norrie.
And George Norrie back with Dane Wigington as we talk about geoengineering and climate engineering as well. It's amazing. Don't they realize they're also doing it to themselves, Dane?
Well, certainly that question is one that many people ask. And what I would say is this, is, does an addict realize they're killing themselves when they continue with their habit?
They don't care.
What addiction is more profound than the addiction to power, George? And what else are they doing to themselves? They've detonated 2,000 nuclear bombs all over the globe. That contaminated every living organism on the planet. We have Fukushima, that may be an extinction level event by itself. No technology to fix it, no end in sight. They're building 60 more nuke plants right now. So I would argue again that we're not dealing with sanity. We're not dealing with individuals that think in any sense on the long-term horizon. And quite simply, we have many examples of what they've already done to themselves. So the equation is clear.
To the phones we go. Wayne is truck driving in Indiana. Welcome to the show. Hi, Wayne.
Hello. With everything going on way up in the atmosphere, and everybody knows that
not too
car fumes and truck exhausts and everything are bad for you. Is there any correlation that what we put out down here, especially in diesels, because of the new diesel exhaust fluid, that it is having an effect sort of the same way at a lower level?
Oh, that's a great question, Wayne. And one thing in the diesel exhaust fluid is urea. You know that, correct? We know that urea, synthetic urea, is in climate engineering chemical ice nucleating patents. So it's an interesting correlation you make. Are the emissions from other sources of human activity, vehicles, factories, is that a part of the equation for what's happening to the climate? Certainly. Again, every form of human activity that alters the Earth's natural processes or the Earth's natural energy equilibrium is a form of geoengineering. But the intentional attempt to derail these systems is the biggest factor of all. But your question is very valid, and on the subject of urea, again, especially synthetic urea, which is what the new diesel fluids are. Yes, we are trying to connect those dots because it is certainly something we're finding in the sampling of frozen precipitation, like the ice storms and so forth. Wayne, if you're a truck driver, you know how many ice storms there are now, right?
Too many.
We have storms being fed with moisture right out of the Gulf of Mexico. Since when did winter storms originate from the Gulf of Mexico? They're chemically nucleating this moisture. They need a lot of moisture to do this. And so you have ice storm transition zones as this nucleated material is hitting the ground and setting up before it forms a, quote, snowflake, which looks nothing like a historically nucleated snowflake. It was big balls of cotton-looking snow falls at above normal or above freezing temperatures. So very, very different. I don't think anybody can argue the weather is completely different than what it once was.
Why are these storms so violent and so intense these days?
They can't control it.
Well, it depends on where. For example, in Northern California, our storms are not violent at all. In fact, where we live, they're very non-events compared to 15 years ago. So it depends on where it's at. Now, on the nucleating process, George, we're seeing more intense low-pressure zones, the bomb cyclones that now we hear about that we never heard about 10 years ago. The term didn't even exist. So we have the bomb cyclones, and it appears now because the atmosphere is warming so much that wind energy is needed to carry the particulates and the ice nucleating materials far enough to help further what's called an endothermic reaction, an energy-absorbing reaction. So, yes, we are seeing what appears to be an attempt to make these circulations more intense, and that seems to be a desperate attempt to carry out the engineered winter events. And your listeners can search the engineering winter section at geoengineeringwatch.org and learn all about this.
Okay, back to the phones we go. Walter in Pennsylvania. Hello, Walt.
Hi, George.
Good to have you with
cooling.
About a week ago, you had Dr. Tim Ball on, and needless to say, I think he was the direct opposite of what Dane has been saying. George, I think neither Dr. Ball or Dane is 100% correct. I think, as I said last week, I think that mankind is
right. No, we're not fucking correct.
He's been researching it sadly, we are using ourselves as the guinea pigs.
15 years?
I think it's just common sense.
This guy comes off the cuff.
That the human population of this planet cannot increase ad infinitum, as Dr. Tim Ball made the statement when you had him on about a year ago that he believes that the Earth can safely sustain 28 billion people, which I think is a preposterous notion. So I think Dane...
I was going to state on Dr. Ball, if we can ever get him to actually engage in an equal time debate, fact for fact on the air, which he has repeatedly refused to do with me, despite being invited from a number of national radio show hosts. So perhaps at some point he will agree to such an exchange, and we'll ferret out who has their facts right.
You both talk about climate engineering, though. You both come to that understanding. Where do you two differ?
I don't. To my knowledge, I haven't heard Tim Ball state that. Maybe he is now.
No, he is. He has.
Well, where we differ, George, is the notion that human activity is not warming the planet. And again, we have statistically, and I'm not an Al Gore fan, carbon credits are a sham. The environmental groups are behaving like complete hypocrites in their total denial of climate engineering because they don't want to lose their 501 nonprofits. And we know that because our attorneys have spoken to their attorneys. But as far as this notion that there's nothing to worry about, the planet's not warming or not warming catastrophically, I mean, statistically, the data is overwhelming. I mean, we are on track for what's called Venus syndrome. And so these narratives by a certain select few individuals, Lord Christopher Monckton also being one, it simply does not hold up to the data. And I would welcome an equal time moderated on-air debate with any of these individuals, and all of them, Monckton, Ball, have all repeatedly refused to engage in such a fact-finding debate on air with me.
Interesting. That would be a great debate. Maybe we can see if we can pull that together.
Let's pull it together, George.
Let us go next to Bill in the state of Washington. Hello, William. Go ahead.
Hey, Dane. Hey, George. I'm reading this book called The Sixth Extinction, and there's an opening quote from Professor E.O. Wilson, who's an eminent biologist and naturalist. He's an American, but when you're talking, you make me think of that quote. He's talking about the irony of organic evolution, and he says that life, at the instant of achieving self-understanding through the mind of man, also doomed some of its most beautiful creatures, or creations. And I can't help but wonder if, Homo sapien, the great tool maker, all right, if we're not just going to build ourselves into oblivion.
Well, again, those are great questions. And statistically speaking, on the current course, we face certain near-term planetary omnicide. That's a mathematical, statistical fact. So, and on your question, it's very profound also in that if we look at all other species on the planet, they work symbiotically for the overall good, for the equilibrium of the planet. The only one that doesn't is us. So that certainly fits with that equation.
Let's go to Lori in Redding, California, west of the Rockies. Hello, Lori. Go ahead.
Hello, George. I wanted to thank you so much the other night. You were sharing very profoundly about how you kind of informed your dad that you weren't really going to follow through on the family dental
Oh, yeah.
Change the subject,
That was so
Lori.
touching, George, because there's a lot of people that need to really make their own decisions, and this fits tonight's topic. If there's people that have, their family members that want to join the military and they're very, concerned about that, or their babies are going to be vaccinated. There's so much controversy and challenges that to have you share that was really important. And I thank your whole team, Lisa and Tommy. You've got a great team, George.
We sure do.
Thanks for bringing Dane on.
We sure do. If I can mention 2 points quickly.
I think you should bring him on
We are facing here in the West Coast possibly round 2 of more of these catastrophic fires, the firenados, and all the rest. So we're kind of bracing ourselves emotionally as we watch our friends in Australia in their 3rd to 4th month of this disaster, and how people are, and this is where maybe Dan could mention how they're using, they're arsonists, or they're the homeless people, transient people that are just trying to keep warm, or it's the bark beetles, or it's poor fuel management of the forest, or PG&E. There's all these people and entities to blame, but they're not addressing what Dane has been suggesting for the longest time, is the geoengineering factor that puts all of these things into place so you can blame, quote-unquote, nature. Time permitting, Dane, if you can mention what's going on with the zip-lipped silent cowards like the faith-based churches or the environmental groups, mainstream media. I know we've got a few people that have billboards out there, but you've done 233 shows of Global Alert News, so wherever you want to go, I just really appreciate your fortitude, Dane. You're awesome.
YouTube.
Thank you, Lori. If I can, I'll answer very quickly, George, what Lori stated. The cause of ignition for these fires is a separate subject completely, and we can speculate on those causes of ignition, but the fact that climate engineering is setting the template for this to happen is absolutely indisputable, and the level of burn downs, if we look at the Siberian forest, George, when they blame this on excess fuel loading because we're not cutting down enough trees, that is patently false. Forests in Siberia that haven't been touched for hundreds of thousands of years, in the last 10 years, from 2000 to 2010, fire burn rate went up 1,000%.
Wow.
So, again, untouched forests, rate change dramatically over what they'd been for hundreds of thousands of years. So, quite simply, there's a factor that we're not being told about, and that factor is climate engineering.
That much percent? That's huge.
1,000%, 10 times more.
We've got Mike in Clarkston, Georgia. Welcome to the program, Mike. Go ahead.
Morning, George and Dane. How you doing?
Morning. Good.
You were talking about walking out the door and it's cold outside and you don't think about the heat anywhere else. When we had our huge freeze, the first freeze, it was either November or December here in the country. That was when Australia started having their triple-digit heat wave. And that was before all the fires down there.
Climate laboratory outside your door.
Some issues in Tennessee. I was wondering if you did any work in southwest North Carolina.
All over.
Well, we simply captured
there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Chattanooga. And it kind of, because of the mountains and the bowl that it creates, it kind of has its own weather to start with.
What we recorded over Tennessee was 3 C-17 Globemasters, U.S. military aircraft, and they were massive spray dispersions flying in formations, and your listeners can look at that on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org. And to also reiterate what Lori said before, it appears from what we know as the schedule weather that comes through NOAA that's created ultimately by Raytheon, it appears that the schedule weather at this point is that they're again going to set the template for massive northern hemisphere burn downs again once summer comes to this direction. So there's a number of reasons why we feel that they're facilitating this, and your listeners can learn about that, George, under the Engineering Wildfire section at geoengineeringwatch.org.
Geoengineeringwatch.org, linked up at coasttocoastam.com. Sophie's with us in L.A. Hey, Sophie, go ahead.
Oh, hi, George.
Hi.
Hi. Hi, Dane. Thank you for taking my call. This is a very sad information, and I want to make a comment and then a question, and I'll take my answer up the air.
Okay.
I've had health issues over the last 5 years that I never had before, and one of the things that came up in my blood test was aluminum, which doesn't make sense. I don't drink a lot of sodas out of cans or anything. And then just the huge rate of cancer that we've had in the last decade or two. I wonder if it has anything to do with what you're talking about. And then is my question is there any hope, and what can we do about it? And I'll take my answer up the air.
Thank you, Sophie. That's the most important question of all. Is there any chance we will know the planet we have once known? Statistically, mathematically, no. That planet is gone. The equilibrium periods after former such events that happened, again, at a fraction of the speed. This is happening at equilibrium periods of 10 to 20 million years. The planet we've known, the hospitable planet we've known, is done. Can we salvage any part of Earth's life support systems? That remains to be seen, and that depends on what we collectively do or don't do. And I would encourage people, one quick statement, George, to use the science terms when they're conveying this issue to someone else. Avoid the chemtrails term unless you're talking amongst friends. That term leads straight to conspiracy theory and hoax. Use climate engineering, geoengineering, solar radiation management, and pass on credible printed data. We do offer that at geoengineeringwatch.org on our homepage. Very compelling printed data at our approximate cost of producing and shipping that's much more effective to waking others. If we can bring this issue to the full light of day, wake our military brothers and sisters up as to what they're participating in, we have a chance of exposing and stopping these programs. If we can do that, we'll have taken a quantum leap in the right direction.
Do they ever have any revolts from the pilots, let's say, assuming they're not drones?
None we know of, except for perhaps let's think about the aircraft that mysteriously just went missing, what 2 or 3 years ago, that took them a month to find, that they just, as if they don't know where these aircraft are with transponders. Was that some sort of defection? We don't know. We certainly don't know that, and I'm sure that anybody in that kind of position to know what they're doing would be monitored to an incredible level. We are communicating with some commercial aircraft pilots off the record. They absolutely know this is going on. They're leaving our materials around in pilot lunchrooms and so forth.
Well, they see it. They see it happening.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We got a call from two Gulfstream pilots, the Gulfstream private aircraft. They fly very important people. These aircraft, the temperatures were so hot, above 40,000 feet, and nearly 40 degrees above normal. The air couldn't carry the aircraft. They went into forced automatic pilot descents. These guys were extremely alarmed. They can't hide this elephant in the sky much longer, George. We need everybody to help us bring this to light. It is the priority, the battle we must win, or all is lost.
All right, my friend Dane, keep in touch with us, okay?
Thank you so much for your voice in this battle, George.
Absolutely.